Welcome to another deep dive. This time we're going to be tackling personal finance, but not your typical budgeting 101. You said it's a really cool conversation between Jay Shetty and Jaspreet Singh,
Oh, yeah.
who calls himself the chief money nerd.
It is catchy, isn't it? I mean, I kind of want that on my business card. I thought the thing that really stood out to me was how they tie in financial health to, like, your whole well-being.
Oh, totally. I love
So it's
that.
like, it's not just dollars and cents. It's got to be a holistic approach.
I love that they have this quadrifit theory.
Yeah.
Can you break that down a little bit for our listener?
Sure. The quadrifit theory basically says that true wealth comes from balancing 4 areas: physical, mental, spiritual, and, of course, financial fitness. It's kind of like thinking about a table, If one leg is a little wobbly, the whole thing's going to be unstable.
Oh,
It
yeah.
all has to work together.
So even if you're, crushing it financially, you might not feel truly wealthy if you're, like, neglecting your health or your mental well-being.
Right.
That's a powerful concept.
It is. And I think it also leads right into the bad financial habits that they talk about, like the
Right.
ones that keep people in that poverty mindset. They call them the 2 S's.
Okay. I'm intrigued. What's the first S?
So the first S is spending and saving. And a lot of people get caught in this cycle of working, getting their paycheck, spending most of it, saving a little bit, but it just kind of sits there. It's
Yeah.
not really working for them.
Yeah, I think a lot of us can relate to that.
I think so.
What about the second S?
The second S is blindly following the system. So that old adage of go to school, get a good job, climb the corporate ladder.
Right.
They're arguing that in today's economy, that may not actually lead to wealth.
Yeah, it feels like the rules of the game have definitely changed. What's the third bad money habit they talked about?
This one is really interesting. It's not understanding how money works. And they go into this whole difference between currency, which is just that means of exchange, and a store of value, which is something that actually holds its worth over time.
Okay.
A lot of people mix those two up, which leads to some bad financial decisions.
So it's not just about having money. It's about understanding, like, how to make it work for you.
Exactly.
And this is where the concept of, like, building equity comes in, right?
Yeah, exactly. So Singh emphasizes that true wealth comes from building equity. It comes from owning assets that actually generate income.
Okay.
They use the example of like a job. A job is trading your time for money,
Mm-hmm.
but an asset, like say a rental property, that's making money for you.
While you sleep.
Exactly. Even while you sleep.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. They also talk about a wealth formula. What is that?
It's actually a pretty simple formula. So it's income minus expenses equals investments plus savings. And I think the key there is having that margin
Okay.
between what you earn and what you spend.
Okay.
And then that difference, that's where you start to build those income-generating assets, not just letting it sit in your savings account.
That's a really practical way to look at it. Now, I know a lot of people listening are probably thinking, but I don't have enough money to invest. So what would they say to that?
Well, Singh tells this great story about his first real estate investment, which was a condo he bought for, get this, $8,000.
Wow.
He emphasizes that you don't have to start with a ton of money.
Okay.
Small, consistent investments can really snowball over time. He talks about things like ETFs, which are basically like these baskets of stocks. So it gives you more diversified exposure to the market.
That feels a lot less intimidating than trying to pick individual stocks.
Yeah,
So starting small and staying consistent is key.
that's what they say.
Okay. What about the economy? They spend a lot of time talking about inflation.
They do. And Singh really goes into how the Federal Reserve, which is the central bank of the U.S., how they basically fueled inflation by printing trillions of dollars during the pandemic.
Wow.
And he says that's what really decreased the value of the dollar, which makes everything we buy more expensive.
Okay, so that's super relevant, especially right now with all the talk of a potential recession. What are their thoughts on that?
Well, he doesn't really sugarcoat it. He believes a recession is pretty likely.
Okay.
But here's the thing. He actually sees recessions as great opportunities for people who are prepared.
Ooh, okay, now this is getting interesting. What does he mean by being prepared?
Well, he says, like, think about those assets that you might want to buy
Right?
and just wait for the right moment. A recession, when prices are down, could be that perfect opportunity.
So it's about having a plan and then being ready to act.
Exactly. He also reminds us that a lot of times the government tends to downplay economic problems, but it's really important to do your own research and think for
Right.
yourself.
It's about becoming financially savvy and not just trusting blindly what you hear.
Exactly.
So on a lighter note, they also touch on those get-rich-quick schemes. What's their take?
Avoid them like the plague.
Oh.
They really emphasize that building wealth takes time, it takes discipline, it takes a willingness to learn.
Patience, education are key.
Yeah.
Now, they also touch on something that I think is super important, especially in today's world, and that's aligning your finances with your values.
Oh, absolutely.
What did they have to say about that?
He tells this very personal story about how he actually turned down free government money during the pandemic.
What? Why would he do that?
Well, he felt like the system was unsustainable, and he didn't want to be part of a system that he believes is actually harming people who lack financial education.
Wow, that's a really bold move.
It is.
It really shows that, financial decisions aren't just about numbers. It's about what you believe in.
Exactly. They argue that understanding how money works and then making choices that align with your values is crucial for, really genuine financial well-being.
That is a great note to end on for this part of our deep dive. We're going to pick back up with more insights for this conversation in the next part.
It's funny how that story kind of ties into their whole point about the biggest financial fraud in American history.
That really caught my attention.
Yeah.
What did they mean by that?
Well, he was talking about the government's pandemic stimulus programs.
Okay.
And that lack of oversight, which led to, just widespread fraud.
Yeah.
He argues that a lot of people were basically tricked into taking on this free money that came with all these hidden costs.
Yeah, it's like that old saying, there's no such thing as a free lunch.
Exactly right. And it goes back to their emphasis on financial education. If more people understood how money worked, they'd be less likely to fall for these kinds of schemes.
Right. It's about empowering yourself with knowledge and critical thinking.
Exactly.
So it's about taking ownership of your financial decisions and being informed. Did they talk about any specific strategies for becoming more financially literate?
Well, they didn't really lay out a step-by-step roadmap.
Okay.
But they did emphasize, the importance of continually learning and expanding your financial knowledge.
Okay.
Whether that's through books, online courses, even, reliable YouTube channels.
There's a lot out there.
There is.
It's like become the chief money nerd of your own life.
Exactly. Take control of your financial destiny. And it all starts with education.
Okay, so besides education, did they offer any practical advice for managing money on a day-to-day basis?
One thing they talked about was the importance of understanding the difference between assets and liabilities.
Okay.
So an asset is something that puts money in your pocket, like a rental property or a business, whereas a liability takes money out, like a car loan or credit card debt.
Okay, so the classic advice of building assets and minimizing liabilities.
Yeah, exactly.
Did they give any real-world examples of how to do that?
Yeah, he actually shares a story about his car.
Oh.
So he could easily afford, a fancy car, but he chooses to drive an older, less expensive one.
Okay.
His reasoning is that he'd rather invest that money in assets that will generate more wealth over time.
It sounds like he's really walking the walk.
He is putting his money where his mouth is.
So did they discuss any other practical strategies for managing money effectively?
Yeah, they highlight the importance of knowing where your money is going.
Okay.
You can't make smart decisions if you don't even know how much you're spending and on what.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Did they recommend any specific budgeting techniques or tools?
They didn't really endorse any particular methods,
Okay.
but they did say finding a system that works for you and sticking with it is really crucial.
Okay.
Whether that's budgeting apps, the envelope system, find what works for you.
Okay, so finding what works and staying consistent. Now, besides the practical tips, did they get into the kind of the mindset part of money at all?
Oh, absolutely. They talk about the importance of viewing money as a tool, not an end goal in itself.
Okay.
It's a resource to help you achieve your goals and create the life you want.
It's kind of like it takes the emotion out of money a little bit.
It does, yeah. And it goes back to that idea of aligning your financial goals with your values. Singh talked about how he defines wealth, not just in terms of money, but his relationships, his health, his spiritual well-being, and his contribution to the world.
It's about defining wealth on your own terms, creating a life that feels rich, not just financially, but personally.
Exactly.
Did they have any advice for people who might be struggling with, negative thoughts or limiting beliefs about money?
Yeah, they acknowledge that everyone has their own kind of, baggage around money,
Right.
and they encourage listeners to just become aware of any of those negative thoughts that might be holding them back.
Okay, that self-awareness piece is so important.
Hmm.
But how do you actually change those negative beliefs?
Yeah.
Did they offer any strategies?
They emphasize the importance of challenging those thoughts and replacing them with more positive ones.
Okay, so it's about consciously shifting your mindset and creating like a more positive internal dialogue around money.
Yeah, like using affirmations, visualizations, surrounding yourself with people who have a healthy relationship with money.
So it's about, really actively working on that mindset shift.
It
It
is.
feels like we've already covered so much, but I'm really excited to dig even deeper into this whole idea of personal finance as a tool
Mm.
for, not just individual wealth, but for positive change in the world.
Yeah, it really is a shift in perspective, isn't it? Like it goes beyond just our own bottom line. It's like
Yeah.
how can our financial decisions kind of ripple out and make a difference in the bigger picture?
So for our listener who's, fired up and ready to take action, what are some concrete steps that they can take, like today, to start aligning their finances with their values and really making a difference?
Well, I think one really powerful step is to become a conscious consumer.
All right.
Really think about where you're spending your money and do those businesses actually align with what you believe in?
Okay.
Are they ethical? Are they sustainable? Do they treat their employees fairly?
So it's about voting with your dollars and really supporting those businesses that are doing good.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be all or nothing. Maybe you start shifting just a small percentage of your spending towards companies that you feel good about.
Okay, so that feels achievable, even for someone just starting out.
Mm.
What other steps can our listener take to make their money a force for good?
Well, another area is investing. A lot of people are looking into socially responsible investing, or SRI.
Okay.
And these are investment funds that actually prioritize companies that are focused on things like environmental, social, and governance factors.
So you can actually invest in companies that are making a positive impact while also potentially, growing your wealth.
That's the idea. And there are so many more options out there now.
Oh, wow.
From mutual funds to ETF.
Okay.
You can even find ones that focus on really specific causes like renewable energy or sustainable agriculture.
It feels like, yeah, we're going beyond just avoiding harm to like actively investing in solutions.
Exactly. And then another really powerful way to align your finances with your values is through philanthropy. A lot of people think, oh, I'll donate when I'm rich.
Right.
But even a small monthly donation to an organization you believe in can make a huge difference.
Yeah, I think a lot of people forget that it can be small. It doesn't have to be, millions of dollars.
Exactly. And it's so rewarding.
It's about aligning your spending, your investing, your giving, all with what's in your heart.
Yeah.
Now, I want to step back for a second because what about people who are still struggling to make ends meet?
Right.
Like, how can they even think about making a difference when they're just trying to, survive?
That's a really important point because not everyone has the same resources.
Right.
But even if you have limited means, there are still ways to make a difference.
So what are some examples I know our listeners are probably waiting to hear?
Well, one is through volunteering. A lot of organizations rely heavily on volunteers, and that can be really valuable, especially if you can't donate financially. You're giving your time and your skills.
So it's about giving what you can, whether it's time, skills, or money.
Exactly. And another thing you can do is just be an advocate for change.
Okay.
Support policies that promote things like financial literacy, economic justice, equal opportunity for all.
Okay, so use your voice, use your vote.
Exactly.
Now, before we wrap up, I want to touch on something they talked about that I thought was really powerful. And it was this whole idea of reclaiming the word wealth.
Oh, yeah.
What do they mean by that?
Well, they argued that wealth has just become way too narrowly focused on money and material possessions.
Yeah.
So they encouraged us to really redefine it in a more holistic way.
Right. It's about recognizing that true wealth encompasses so much more than just, your net worth statement.
Right. It's your relationships, your health and well-being, your purpose, your contribution.
It's about living a life that feels rich and meaningful and abundant on all these different levels.
Yes.
And that feels like a really, really powerful place to end our deep dive today.
I think so too. It's a good reminder that financial well-being is not just about accumulating more. It's about using your resources to create a life you love.
And that's aligned with your values.
And makes a difference.
So listener, as you go forward on your own financial journey, remember, you have the power to make a difference. Start small, be consistent, and never underestimate your impact.
Beautifully said. Until next time.